self-motivated student would look like. She's a hard worker, both independently with a team. Um, she's respectful toward adults and peers and has my full trust due to the integrity that she shows at all times. Her attitude towards school and life has caused her to be extremely successful in school. I know she will continue to be equally as successful in other areas of life. I'm proud to have been able to select her for this honor. That's awesome. Are there any agenda changes? Okay. And then now we have the reports from council members. Anybody like to get started? Mr. Patton?
Just a couple of events I went to this past weekend. I went to the Katie's Cafe Surf Contest. That contest is getting bigger and bigger. I'm sure Mr. Didino will talk more about that. And so I was a spectator there. And then the Kiwanis Club did their annual fishing derby. And I think they had one of their largest amount of people. And I just watched kids catch fish. I volunteered for a couple hours. I think my hands still smell like squid. And no, just joking. And it was great fun just to watch a kid catch a fish for the first time. And they were big. I mean, the fish, they were like that big. And but they were so excited. And I had a great time.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Bragg?
Thank you. I had the privilege and honor to attend our Delaware Sidewalk Celebration ribbon cutting ceremony yesterday afternoon with the mayor and many of our staff members. And this was a project that started in 2004. Here it is 2015, and we finally got it completed. And government's like a big bus. It turns real slow. But there were many things that impeded that project, the dissolution of redevelopment, the recession. But through it all, the residents on Delaware Street hung in there with us, and it was a great day. There was a resident who had lived on that street since 1970. And she walked down to the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we had her cut the ribbon. And it was just a great day for her. It was a great day for the city of Imperial Beach. And one of the comments that was made is that this was a true investment in our neighborhood. And truly, my colleagues and I here on the dais are really committed to improving this community one sidewalk at a time, one driveway at a time, and one alley at a time. So if you were not able to attend, I'm sure there's going to be pictures on our city page as well. But again, it was a $225,000 investment in this community. So I'd like to thank the mayor for being there as well. And special accolades to our Public Works Director, Hank Levine, for really staying the course on that project. Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Any other comments? Yeah, I attended the events on Saturday at the beach, and then also the event yesterday. And then there's another event, Outdoor Outreach, an organization that takes kids from underserved areas to transform their lives through contact with the outdoors. It was actually on the beach just north of Katie's Surf Contest, Outdoor Outreach, and they had students from the Barrio Logan College Institute there teaching them how to surf. It was really a great event, and I want to thank our lifeguards for overseeing that and all the events on the beach. It was a very, very busy weekend. There were tens of thousands of people on the beach this weekend, so thank you very much. That was great. Then I went over to the Boys and Girls Club on Saturday to see the ribbon cutting for the opening of the John Harvard Academy. It's an after-school tutoring program, and it's a very innovative partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. So I want to thank our friends at the Boys and Girls Club for fostering that partnership. Hopefully it'll work out well. And the John Harvard Academy has two other centers in Point Loma and Coronado. So this will be a very different experience for them, but very interesting to see the desire and energy they have to really help serve the needs of our K through 12th graders. And I think they said they helped one student from Mar Vista get into Harvard. So that's something that's really great. So very, very excited about that. And I want to thank again Hank Levine and all the staff at NVIA for a great event yesterday. It was an old school IB, very cool event, and neighbors were really appreciative. And we're going to do a lot more of that and really celebrate the work that we're doing throughout the 4 square miles of this great city. So anyway, thank you. Do we have any communications from city staff?
No, sir.
Great. We have a couple of speaker slips. And just to let you know, love having people speak. We can't, by law, respond to you. So if you have questions or stuff, you can direct it to the city manager. He can take comment. Sometimes he'll respond, but more generally, most of the time, he'll get that comment and get back to you. And just for those of you watching on YouTube, just so you understand why we might look like we're not interested. We are very interested. We just can't respond. So I now have Sandra Guevara. And when you please come up, please give your name and address. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mayor Dedina and council members. My name is Sandra Guevara. I go by Sam. I'm an employee of the City of Imperial Beach. I'm one of the code compliance officers in the Community Development Department. I've been employed with the city for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm a resident of Imperial Beach for 40 years. I just wanted to let you know tonight that I'm here to support the bargaining team, which is fighting for a fair contract. And most specifically, I'd like to thank the city manager and the management in improving the morale and the working conditions and the lives of the Imperial Beach employees. I have covered my husband with my health insurance through work for my entire adult life. My husband's always had a job where he hasn't had health insurance, so I've always covered him, and I've understood that, and I've also covered my children. But it's a very important point for me. My husband's retiring and will not have any health insurance until he qualifies for Medicare. So it's important that we have health insurance, and it's definitely close to my heart. We're currently in negotiations and have been making progress toward a deal that is very fair for me and all the other workers of Imperial Beach. And we appreciate that the city continues in this effort to improve the lives of the employees and residents and everyone in the city. And we hope that we can reach a deal soon that's fair and continues with that relationship. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. David Garcias.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city manager. My name is David Garcias. I'm the president of Service Employees International Union, Local 221, representing over almost 14,000 public employees. But here today, I'm also the lead negotiator for the Imperial Beach negotiations. And then also personally, I worked here many years, and I have a personal relationship with both the city staff and our members. And I just want to say that, we've been making progress at the table. And, they say sometimes as you get near the end, there's a lot of tension but things seem to come around near that end. And I want to really say I appreciate the leadership of the city manager and the fact that we've been able to work on a lot of these issues and be able to get some movement on both sides, and so that we can have sort of a fair contract, and our members feel it's fair. It's not always easy, negotiations, and I know some of you have been in negotiations where it's not always easy, and it can get very tense. But I believe we're making progress at the table, and one that'll build on our relationship with the city, which our members are very proud to work for. And Imperial Beach, I'm very happy. Imperial Beach is a great place to live, to work, and to raise a family. And so we appreciate the leadership on the council and the city manager's office for really working with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We're done with the public comment period. Now we have presentations. 1.1. This is very great. Proclamation and recognition of National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And Mr. Little, I'll read just a couple of things and then we'll invite you up. And I'll actually read the proclamation first. Okay. Mr. Chad Little actually reached out to me to talk about the importance of this, and we absolutely agree that it's important to recognize the National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month and the need to really deal with prostate cancer. So thank you very much. Mr. Little is a prostate cancer awareness advocate that lives in San Diego County. His father, Harry, was diagnosed in 2006 with prostate cancer, and since then he has been involved with in the prostate cancer community. Currently, he's on the board of directors for 2 prostate cancer affiliated nonprofits. For the first one is the California Prostate Cancer Coalition, whose mission is to dedicate to saving men's lives by making prostate cancer a key public health priority in California. And then Us Two International, the mission of which is to provide hope and improve the lives of those affected by prostate cancer through support, education, and advocacy and awareness. And their vision is a world without prostate cancer suffering. So I'll read this proclamation and we can come up and take a photo. So I'm getting hand to you. Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, September 2015. Whereas the city of Imperial Beach has the responsibility to recognize occasions of outstanding significance, and whereas prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in men aside from skin cancer, and it is estimated that 1 in 7 men will develop this disease in their lifetime. And whereas the American Cancer Society estimates there will be 220,800 new cases of prostate cancer in the USA in 2015, resulting in an estimated 27,540 deaths. And whereas it is estimated that 21,060 men in California will be diagnosed with prostate cancer this year, and it is estimated that 3,180 California men will die from this disease. And whereas African American men have the highest prostate cancer incidence rates in the world, and their prostate cancer death rate in the USA is more than twice that of any other ethnic group of men. Whereas recent studies suggest that a high diet and processed meat or dairy foods may be a risk factor, and obesity appears to increase risk of aggressive prostate cancer. And whereas the city of Imperial Beach joins communities across our nation to increase the awareness about the importance for men to make an informed decision with their healthcare provider about early detection and testing for prostate cancer. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Serge Dedina, Mayor of the city of Imperial Beach, California, together with the City Council, designate September 2015 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the city of Imperial Beach, and urge all members of our community to join in recognition of this significant event. I'm sure we'll get all our young men to grow their mustaches in November. So that's been a really important step for getting the awareness out among all the younger hipsters and stuff. So thank you for your work and advocating for prostate cancer awareness.
Mayor, thank you, as well as council members, for taking the time to let us do this proclamation. As the mayor said, 1 in 7 men are impacted. Traditionally, men, we're told, don't like to talk about our health, and perhaps that we might be stubborn. And I say, no, we're not to that. But women have done a great job with breast cancer. Susan G. Komen, you can't go anywhere in October and not see pink, and you know very well about breast cancer. And so what I'd just like to point out that 1 in 7 men will get prostate cancer, which is actually more prevalent in men than breast cancer is in women. Yet we have a long way to go in terms of making sure men are aware that they need to talk to their healthcare professional and talk about the things that they can do, whether it's a PSA test, whether it's a regular digital rectal exam, but they need to be paying attention to their health because unfortunately prostate cancer is very asymptomatic. So you may not even know that you have it. And so by the time it manifests, that's unfortunately probably too late and very aggressive. So since my dad was diagnosed in 2006, I've made it a personal mission to use time that I can to advocate so men are aware. And I really appreciate you allowing us to put this on the record. And you will see me again in October to talk to you about Movember. We might convince maybe a couple of you to grow a mustache. I'll bring permission slips if you need them. But thank you again for allowing me to address you and for the proclamation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the council? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Little. We really appreciate all your advocacy. Now we move on to consent calendar items 2.1 to 2.3. And I would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items number 2.1 through 2.3. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Great. Now we move on to the public hearing portion of the evening, item 4.1. And 4.1 is adoption of resolution number 2015-7616, authorizing abatement of nuisance conditions and removal of inoperable vehicles at 741 Hickory Court, and that's 0470-20. I declare the public hearing open, and City Attorney Lyon has a statement. Building official Holden will then give a report on the item.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to let the mayor and council know that just in an abundance of caution, since this is a due process hearing, I'm going to have Deputy City Attorney Randall Schoblum sit with the council on this matter, just because he has had no involvement related to this matter on the staff level. So he'll be coming up to sit during this matter.
Great. Mr. Holden.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm Jack Holden, your building official. I also do code compliance. I'm here tonight to present to you the resolution to declare a public nuisance at 741 Hickory Court. A little background on this. Here's a photo taken of the front yard just to give you a perspective of the residence we're talking about, 741 Hickory. This particular property has been a subject of code compliance issues since 2010, and actually a little bit before. The history on this is they were issued notices of violation, fined. They even came to the council and received an abatement approval in 2012. After that, at that time, fines were paid, but as you can see, none of the conditions changed. Fines didn't change the conditions. It remains as it was when the citizens complained about it. The neighbors are still complaining. In 2013, I arrived here, we got some more complaints, so we opened the case again. We've sent numerous notices of violation, numerous administrative cites, and still the conditions remain. The object of this resolution is to receive permission to go ahead and do an abatement process. Let me see if I can move on. The resolution will require the removal of non-operable vehicles. There's no garbage service there, and the roof system. And I want to talk a little bit about those three items. The vehicles have been there. It's really not a big issue to tow away vehicles, things like that. The garbage system, we'll have to figure out a way to provide garbage. It's a requirement under the municipal code for every residence to have a garbage service through EDCO. And we'll have to figure out a way to do that. The main issue that I'd like you to consider, and maybe we can get input from the public since it's public hearing, is the issue of abating the roof system problem. What would happen if we went in and abated the roof system? It could cost the town or the city $6,000 to $12,000 to do an abatement of a private residence. If the owner didn't pay us back, we'd put a lien on the property and we'd be essentially waiting forever for the $6,000 to be returned to the city. So that's my main concern, is how far do we want to go when we do an abatement of a private residence? The main issues at the beginning, 2010, were the roof, the vehicles, and the vegetation. So that's why it's on the resolution, but I want to get your input and consideration on how far do we want to go.
Are you done with your report then?
Yes.
Okay, open it up to questions or comments. I haven't seen anybody, unless I'm missing the queue. Questions or comments from our council members? Sure.
Thank you,
Councilmember
Mr.
Bragg. Do we
Thank
have any
you.
other public presentations? Let's start. Did you put in a speaker slip? I don't have it.
I'm sorry, I came in just a little bit late, so I don't have the speaker slip.
If you could just fill that out and we could let I'm assuming you're counsel for the person in question. Is that right?
Okay, yes.
So we'll let one member of the public speak first. Right. Madam Clerk, we'll let him fill it out, but then speak. Okay, is that okay with the council? Yeah, great. Sounds great. Maybe while we're waiting, the city attorney can give me, so I'm just want to make sure I'm clear on what it's a public hearing, but in terms of legal, this is not a court of law. So, in terms of evidence and way we ask questions, we're just having a normal public hearing. Is that correct? We're not bound by rules of evidence or procedure or anything like that, except we normally operate within the city council meeting. Is that correct?
Correct, but it is due process you're providing
Right, okay.
them and a chance to address the violations that have been
Okay.
raised by staff. So you're acting as a neutral decision maker
Okay.
to either affirm or deny staff's recommendation for declaration of public nuisance.
Are we allowed to ask the person from the public? I'm assuming represents the property in question. Questions? Is that?
Yes, you should ask questions and garner any evidence from the owner as you can,
Okay.
as well as ask any questions about staff about the evidence they present.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. My name is Jason Eliezer. I'm an attorney who represents the homeowner of the subject property here. The homeowner unfortunately could not be here today. I have two major concerns. The first is to address on the face the alleged violations, but I also have some substantial procedural concerns regarding how this is being brought to your honors today. But just to clarify, there's three major issues: the trash service, the abandoned or inoperable vehicles, and the structural hazards with regard to what the city compliance officer refers to as the roof system. I'd like to go through those one by one. First of all, with regard to the citations and the notices of violation that have been provided to the homeowner, the only ones that are consistently throughout I assume that you all have the same packet that we got, which contained all the previous violations and administrative citations, but the only ones that are consistently in there are the trash service and vehicle issues. The issue regarding the roof, which I'll address first, comes in halfway through sometime in 2013. There's no additional notice of violation for those. They're just kind of added in at a late date. And in fact, in the proposed resolution, that issue isn't even addressed in the July 28th, 2015 inspection, which is the most recent inspection, which is alleged to have taken place. But this is an issue which is being approached pursuant to Municipal Code Section 8.50.050, which defines a structural hazard as those which are likely, I'm quoting here, likely to partially or completely collapse or detach because of, and then it lists the various reasons why this collapse may happen. In this case, it's the first one that's listed, which is dilapidation, deterioration, or decay. Dilapidation alone isn't really enough for this kind of violation. There must be a structural hazard which is serious enough to be likely to cause collapse of the structure. But there's no evidence presented in this packet that there's been an inspection of the roof itself or any observation that there's any sort of problem, except for the fact that there's a tarp on the roof, which cannot be seen from the front of the property, can only be seen from an elevated space in the backyard of the property behind the subject property. So you have to get onto a ladder on the neighbor's yard to see that there's a tarp up there. But in any case, there's no actual structural hazard here, and there's been no investigation that would demonstrate that that would cause anything like a likelihood of collapse. The roof has some minor issues. The homeowner will admit that, and the homeowner would like to address those issues. A fix that would permit the removal of the tarp is currently in progress and should be completed within the next couple of weeks. The homeowner would like to replace the roof altogether. However, unfortunately, the large penalties that have been assessed over the last 5 years make it very difficult financially for homeowners of modest means to afford such remediations. With regard to the trash service, that's a problem. We don't dispute that. However, the homeowner did contact the company who picks up the trash, and I will represent to you that trash service will commence again as of the beginning of September. I'm not sure the exact date that it's scheduled to start up again, but they've ordered trash service to start back up again. Finally, with regard to the vehicles, which is the third issue, the notices describe the vehicles as inoperable, wrecked, dismantled, or abandoned, and Municipal Code Section 8.44030 defines these terms very specifically, and I don't think the situation here meets those definitions. My question to code compliance, and I'm not addressing code compliance directly, I understand that would be improper, but my question would be, how did they come to the determination that these vehicles are inoperable? I would direct your honor's attention to the packet that we all got in the pictures therein. These vehicles are not obviously wrecked. There's no, they're not rusted out. They're not dismantled in any way. The tires are inflated. They're not parked on the lawn. They're parked on the driveway. They're all in operating condition, with the possible exception of one of them, which is a historic vehicle, a 1965 Corvair, which is covered and not obviously wrecked or dismantled. And while we dispute the conclusion that these vehicles are in violation of the code, again, the homeowner is working on removing the vehicles because it's obvious that's what the city code compliance officers want. And we resolve to have those vehicles removed by the 5th of September, if at all possible. We're working on that issue as well. The bigger issues, as I see them, are the procedural ones here. There's the vehicles now. It's that the orange one that's partially covered in that picture is the Corvair that, you can see these vehicles are not in terribly dilapidated condition. The engines are still intact and they're still operable. The bigger issue, as I see it, is the procedural issues. And as I understand it, in order for the council to consider remediation on the part of the city, and not just continue with the notices of violations, the city must issue a quote unquote notice of abatement pursuant to 1.16110. And I understand that there's been a lot of notices back and forth, or not just back and forth, but to the homeowners. But a notice of abatement is a very specific thing, and it contains very specific requirements. We can talk about those in more detail if you would like, but no such notice meeting those requirements has been given to the homeowner. The specific notice of abatement, notices of violation, the administrative citations, yes, but this notice of abatement is a special thing, and that hasn't been given to the homeowners. With regard to the vehicles, pursuant to 8.44090, which also has very specific requirements with regard to its contents and service, you can't remove a vehicle without giving these very specific notices, and no such notice has been given with regard to these vehicles. I would also argue that several of the notices of violation and citations don't conform themselves with the municipal code, in particular with section 1.22050. Some of these notices of violation are unsigned and the citations are unsigned. They're inconsistent in identifying what the violation is. The violation, as I described before, regarding structural hazards appears midway without a new unfined notice of violation, which is required by the municipal code, among other issues with those notices. That having been said, the homeowner does agree that there are issues with the property and would like to have an opportunity to remediate those prior to your honors taking action. And as a result, I would propose that we continue this resolution until the next meeting. I would very much like the opportunity to talk to city staff new on the case, have an opportunity to call them myself and discuss what it would take to make sure that the problems are solved. And we want to get the problems solved too. So if your honors would be willing to continue this for a month, we will start that process and see what we can do to make this property come into compliance.
First, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments or questions from the council? Councilmember Bragg?
Thank you.
I don't initially have questions for you per se, but you might want to just stay there and so you don't have to hop up and down. Mr. Holden, if you could please answer some questions for me. In our staff report, it stated that this has been a lengthy process going back to 2010. We have documentation, colleagues, that supports this, photographs from 3/18/2010. The goal here at the City of Imperial Beach is always to gain compliance. However, we can do that. And most of the time we're successful at that. We see very few code compliance issues before us. However, when there are exceptions, they seem to find their way here. I think that's what we're dealing with here today, is the exception and not the norm. Throughout the years, there's a variety of photographs, there's a variety of vehicles, there's a variety of violations. And it seemed at one point that we did gain some compliance, or at least they paid some fines, and I'm not sure that we really did obtain the compliance that we were seeking. That's why we're here today.
That's correct.
So I do have a couple of questions, and I'm going to take the three issues that this gentleman brought up. As far as the trash, that's an ordinance in the City of Imperial Beach that everybody in this room who's a resident pays their trash bill. We all have trash pickup. So it seems like these people don't have trash pickup, or maybe they have it and then they don't, and they have it and then they don't. I think that's a luxury that we would all like. But the problem with that is, and I had this problem, I had a neighbor who didn't have trash service. And what they did end up with was a rodent problem. But the rodents didn't just stay at their house. They came to my house as well. So one of the extenuating circumstances is that this really affects not just this family, but the people behind them, beside them, and in front of them, and ultimately the City of Imperial Beach. So has that been the issue? Is there periods of time with interrupted trash service?
Well, as far as we're aware, there hasn't been trash service for some time. We really have, there's, in some of the older notes, issues about trash, but really, since I've been here and looking at the place, it doesn't look like there's open garbage or garbage bags in the front yard. Whatever they do with their trash, we understand that some neighbors help them with that. But we haven't seen open storage of trash in the front. That would be more of an immediate health concern, and we'd be more aggressive with something like that. But we haven't seen evidence that they could keep it in the garage. We really haven't seen anything
So they-
Leslie Seifert, who's our code compliant officer, is also here, and I'll ask her to address that. Leslie,
Thank you. I'm Leslie Seifert, Code Compliance Officer. When I opened the case in 2013, one of the first things I did was call EDCO to see if they had trash service. I periodically, every time I wrote an NOV or an administrative citation, I called EDCO again to check to see if trash service has been established, and I never got a positive response. Since I opened the case in 2013 through present, they have never had trash service.
Okay. They have never had trash service, but take it upon themselves to somehow dispose of the trash in some kind of fashion. Although in some of the photographs, there is evidence of, there's a lot of stuff in the driveway that appears to be trash. I mean, one man's trash is another man's treasure, but it looks like trash to me. And you have stated that they are engaging in trash service sometime beginning in the beginning of September. It's the 19th. That's a couple more weeks of trash buildup or non-compliance in the trash issue, which is an ordinance.
I understand that they, as soon as they received the sizable report, they became concerned, saw that that was one of the primary issues, called EDCO, and EDCO I'm not exactly sure what happened in those conversations, but it was an issue of getting the trash cans out there, and they couldn't start mid-month or something to that effect, that this was the earliest that EDCO could start was the beginning of a new month. That's my understanding. But they did call EDCO and order that service to start back up again as quickly as possible. They have not been storing their garbage at the property. They've been disposing it as in other manners, as the gentleman discussed. So I don't think since the very initial 2013 report that trash has been an issue with regard to what's trash on the premises or in the premises, that the trash pickup has been the issue, but not actual garbage on the driveway or the like.
Do they understand they have to have trash pickup?
They do.
Okay.
They do.
So they have chosen not to until now.
Yes.
Okay. We have some vehicles on the property. Mr. Holden, Mr. Holden, do they have current registration? It seems to be a dispute as to what is an operable vehicle, what is not operable. Some of these are clearly, flat tires.
yeah, the
Yeah.
red one in front that you can see is registered and it's sometimes operated. The other two are not registered as far as we know. They don't have current registration on the plates, and that's as far as we go. We don't run their VIN numbers or anything like
Right.
that.
So, and that's generally our rule of thumb, is that if it doesn't have a current registration, that it's inoperable. We don't really
Yeah.
delve into whether they have a planned certificate of non-op or anything like that. We just take it at face value, that their tags are expired, so they're
It's
not supposed to be
operable.
driving it.
You can't drive it on a public street, so it's
Okay.
not operable.
Okay.
It may run, but is that the issue? We consider it if it's not operable, it can't be driven.
Correct.
if-
What the issue is that aesthetically, we don't want our driveways to be our storage yards for vehicles that don't have current registrations. As far as the roof, and you,
Do you mind if I just address that very briefly?
go ahead.
Thank you so much.
welcome.
I appreciate that. Again, going back to the way an inoperative vehicle is defined by the municipal code, it doesn't have anything to do with the registration with the DMV. I'll just read it to you. Section 8.44030 I have in front of me, printed out from today from the municipal code online. Subsection F, inoperative vehicle means and includes any motor vehicle that cannot be moved under its own power. Not is legal to drive on public highways, but cannot be moved under its own power. I would imagine this is intended to include vehicles without an engine, with no up on blocks, with no tires, something that will not run if you put a key in it and try and start it. that's not the vehicles that are present here. In particular, with regard to the three vehicles to the left, the Suburban, the Explorer, and the tent camper. If that even counts as a vehicle, that's a different issue. Um, but those vehicles are operational, and the Corvair, they're trying to find a home for it. But again, it's a historic vehicle. They attempt to keep it covered. Obviously, on this day, the tarp is dilapidated or something, but they're working on that. But the other three vehicles are completely operational. Whether or not they're registered may be an issue, but that's not what's considered in what's defined as a inoperative vehicle by the municipal code.
Okay. I really do appreciate you trying to portray your clients as, they're trying to find a home for it. They're trying to, but we've been at this since 2010.
Not with
So
these vehicles, not all of these.
Well, you're right. It's other vehicles.
It's other vehicles,
So-
but those are separate violations, different issues.
And I think that's what is troublesome to me is that they are different vehicles, separate issues, but it's consistently and constantly the same issues. So the goal of the city of Imperial Beach is, as long as I've been on this council and my colleagues before me and us, is compliance. So if it has to be a monetary hammer that we bring down, or if it's an additional month that you're suggesting, you know, I'm a little hesitant to grant that month, given the longevity of this. If it was another home, and it had only been going on for 9 months.
Sure.
I could, this has been a long time. This is a huge packet. You admitted to that yourself.
I understand that, but again, if you want to remove those vehicles, there's a specific procedure that the city must engage in that has not yet been followed, and that procedure is there for a reason, and that we may be, if those procedures that are defined by the municipal code are not followed, then there's some concern regarding due process rights and other issues. I understand they've received notice that the city isn't happy with these vehicles. However, they haven't received a specific notice that the city's going to come and tow those vehicles away. And I think that's required.
Mr. Holden, did you want to address that issue, and perhaps our city attorney could weigh in on that as well?
Yes, I do. In our one slide here, it says the process is the public hearing, the determination of a nuisance, then we inform the owner of the determination, and that's when all those other notifications are provided to the resident. After you declare it a nuisance, then we would do that process and form after you declare it a nuisance.
So they're not done prior to the public hearing?
No, after you declare it a nuisance, then we have to do that. A warrant, an abatement warrant, which would include the vehicles or anything else we did on the property.
Okay. Let's discuss we're talking about the structural hazard of the roof.
Sure.
And some of and I don't know where those pictures, one of my colleagues is going over those now. Mr. Holden, did you want to address
Yeah, I
that
did.
roof and the structural hazard that it
Yeah.
may or may not create?
Well, it's sort of the initial complaint involved the blue tarp being on the roof and the neighbors complaining about that. That's why it's on this particular resolution. But in 2014, I instructed my code compliance officer not to include that. And the reason I did is this is an owner-occupied house. Frankly, if they want to let their roof leak, I believe it's his castle and he can have a leaky roof if he'd like. The only concern I have is not really the roof collapsing, but perhaps a fireman walking on that roof could go right through the roof. And that's my major concern. I would simply direct the fire company to surround and drown rather than do an aggressive attack on a fire. It wouldn't be safe for a fireman. And we're not sure. We haven't had the opportunity of climbing on that roof and doing an inspection. So rather safe than sorry. We'd love to. Part of this process has been an attempt to speak with the owner numerous times. I left my card on his door with my personal cell phone number, asking him to call me. We had another case that was going to be on the agenda. I spoke with the owner, and we settled it simply because I had a chance to sit down with the gentleman, and we worked out a deal because he was willing to talk. Unfortunately, with this one, we just haven't had any communication with the owner, no matter what we tried. So that's why we went ahead with this path to abate it, since we really haven't had any cooperation.
Okay, thank you. Can you explain the reluctance on the part of your client? They can engage in conversation. They've engaged with you.
Sure.
Can you explain that so I can just have a better sense of the reluctance?
There are interfamily issues at
Okay.
play here that are difficult for me to discuss openly in a public forum without betraying my clients'
I understand that.
confidences.
Mhm.
But that is part of the issue. Um, they are of relatively modest means. They want to, they know that there are problems. They want to fix those problems. The the extraordinary amount that they've had to pay in fines make it very difficult for them to address the issues in addition to the interfamily issues that I discussed. But they would, I think they came to me, speaking candidly, because they want to they want to engage and they want to resolve the problem, but at this they got themselves into a difficulty and they don't know even where to start, and they're angry at the amount of money that they've had to spend that's been assessed to their taxes and automatically paid by their mortgage company, and which they in turn have had to pay back, and there's a brand new notice of lien that they just got, and it's uh, it's crushing the amount of money that they have had to use. So don't they don't know where to start, and that's why I'm here to help them along and to be, the conduit between the city. And I'm sorry it's taken this long, but here we are.
Okay.
That's
Well, I really do appreciate you
Yeah.
being candid. And,
Yeah.
if, and I understand being a family of modest means. Um, I just don't understand absolute silence, from them to us. I'm going to go back to my original comment, which was compliance. So, you have you put yourself out there, put the word out there that, and you have represented that, trash service is going to start, that they are, um, let's see, they're looking for a home for the Corvair, with the historical Corvair. 1965, I think, was the year. Maybe somebody will want it, or maybe somebody will warehouse it for them. You talked about a little bit about the roof. Have they hired a contractor? Mr. Hold'em, I would like, a professional opinion on what needs to be done to that, or we haven't even had an opportunity to assess that yet.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Would they be willing to have the roof inspected in the next month?
I haven't received direction from them to that effect specifically, but I imagine so. I would encourage them to open themselves up to such an inspection. I don't know how widespread the roof issues are myself. I'm not a contractor. I've never worked in construction, but I would encourage them to open themselves up to that inspection. And it's my understanding that they have purchased the means to do a fix for the immediate problem, and they would like to hire a contractor to replace the roof altogether. But that is a matter of that is again a matter of means that they're trying to work the money to get that. I mean, you indicated that's $6,000 to $12,000. That's what they indicated to me as well, and that's no small amount of money to pay all at once. So, especially if they have to also pay additional fees that accrue every month, because of these issues, it's difficult to get together, but they want to at least get that tarp off of there, and make it so that any immediate leaks are resolved. But I don't believe that it's a like major issue where, you know, the roof is collapsing. I just think that it's a leaky roof, and they'd like to replace the whole thing. But you know, the present leak can be fixed themselves, they believe.
Okay. I don't know if.
I know
like-
Councilmember
oh,
Bilbray
okay.
had a comment, then I have Councilmember Patton, you had a comment.
Go
So,
ahead.
Councilmember Bilbray. Okay.
So you mentioned you not and Leslie and Sam and Mr. Holden, thanks for doing your job, for being here for our city. And you've mentioned you haven't talked to anybody in the city yet.
I have not. I was just.
Can I ask you why?
I was just brought on
Yesterday?
not yesterday, but just a couple of days ago, and I've been trying to catch up to speed. As we mentioned, there's a sizable stack of documentation. I wanted to make sure, as my first priority, that I was here since they could not be, and that I understood the issues and the history, which is lengthy. And I knew that I was coming in not having talked to you guys yet, but I'll give you my card right now. Let's have a conversation tomorrow. I'll be in my office all day, or, you know, at the property. You know, we can have a number of conversations from here on out. We want to start the conversation. I'm sorry it took this to start that conversation up again, but here we are.
Which brings us to this. This is something that no city, our city, never ever wants to do.
Sure.
I mean, this is not a good thing. And I know from my colleagues up here and the city staff, this is last ditch effort, you know, to bring this effort. And it's troublesome to me. I had one thing, maybe Mr. Holden, you can help me with the fines, and then I'll go back to 2010. The fines were up to $16,500, and you mentioned liens, and they paid this and that. I see they paid $2,500.
With regard to the item that was, so as far as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two separate cases here. And there's the one that started in 2010 and the one that started in 2013. And the one that started in 2010, they paid $16,000 on by way of their property tax lien, a special assessment. Is that correct?
No, that's from the 2010, we believe it was around $2,000, something like that. Right now, there's a current lien of $16,000 for all the admin sites and everything else. And that is a lien on the property, no payments.
And that's what I'm looking at too.
But-
And in fact, as of May 19, 2015, now it's down to 14,000 because they did some payments. So just to clarify, maybe you could talk to them later about this. We don't have to go to the nitty gritty of
Sure,
the money
sure.
right now. But that's, it's maybe you're hearing one thing and then this is a reality.
It's certainly possible.
Okay.
That notice of lien will turn into a tax assessment as a matter of course, it's my understanding. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that the notice of lien was done, it's my understanding, in all likelihood in late July, because that means that it gets on this year's tax assessment, and that's going to get paid out of the tax assessment, or there's all sorts of other problems, but the lender won't permit that to happen.
So in 2010, now I'll go back
Sure.
5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. That's a long time. I imagine myself 6 years ago as a much younger man. I look at the cars on there. It's just we've just recycled. We have different cars, different trash, different cars, and it's a big cycle thing. And that's why I think we're all up here talking about this, because it's just a repeating. And you said like in 1 month, we'll take care of this in 1 month. I'm just curious. Have you heard that before? In 1 month, we're going to take care of this?
Yeah, the checks in the mail, that 1 month, yeah, it's similar.
Because that's, I'd love to say, yeah, let's do this in 1 month because we have, what's your name?
Jason.
We have Mr. Jason here, and I'm trusting you,
Mhm.
and I'm believing you, and that's probably one of my worst traits is trusting and believing some people. And 1 month, trash, cars, roof.
That's
a lot.
I understand. I would, to a certain extent, I'm trusting my clients, and that's what it takes. I will certainly strongly encourage them to do everything they can. I actually don't think that we're talking about a whole lot of work that has to be done. A phone call to EDCO, which has been made, and I will absolutely follow up on that and make sure that that gets started. You know, the vehicle, that my client represented to me. Let's see, what did I do with my notes? My apologies. That she had a lead on where those vehicles can go, and she had hoped to make them go by she gave me a date specific, which was encouraging, and that was, pardon me, the 5th of September. That's that. It wasn't finalized, but that was the specific goal. And again, I respectfully disagree with the way the procedure should work pursuant to 1.16110. This notice of abatement that must go out has to include things like, and I know I'm mixing the issues up here, certainly, but this notice of abatement has to include issues such as the date, time, and location for which this hearing has been set, and that wasn't given to them. So if the notice of abatement is to include notice of this hearing, then what's the purpose of it going out after the hearing takes place? I understand that as a practical matter, they got notice of the hearing, and that's why I'm here. But the procedure is specific, and there are things in there, reference to the chapter, reference to exactly what may happen if you don't comply. In particular, the city may come out and do it for you. Those sort of notices were not given in a timely manner, and giving them after the fact would be after you have taken action would be contrary to what the code intends and specifically describes.
So I guess what we're saying is you're not on notice, you're on double, triple, quadrupled notice. Like we're noticing a notice, a notice, a notice. I mean, where do we stop? And so before you speak, you know,
Are you asking a question or are you going to?
no, I don't want him to speak right now. Although I like, yeah, I need to hear myself here. I really think that, in looking at the big picture, and my colleagues could agree or disagree with me. And, do we allow one more month or don't we? Or what do we do here? Because we could sit here until 10 o'clock, go around in circles. So Mr. Bilbray.
Yeah, Mr. Bilber, I know you had some feedback on the vehicles, but yeah, please give us your.
I
insight.
remember when this whole issue was brought up. I think I was 26 at the time, and first couple months of being on the council, and I went to bat for your client. And both my colleagues are correct. This isn't about a fund or revenue generation. This is about compliance. And I'm sorry, I'm a mechanic when I'm not up here, and there's no way that Corvina is running if you go and put a key into it. If it's been sitting for 5 years, like these pictures show, that gasoline's toast. And if you try and start that, you'll have to replace the carburetor and everything else. You might as well tear out the engine. But I mean, I'm willing to give you another month, but I'd also direct staff to address every issue procedurally. every procedural issue that has been brought forward so that the next time this comes to council, we can act on this. And I'll go ahead and move that we continue this to the second meeting in September.
Am I allowed to make a comment? Great, thank you. Yeah, I thank you for all your comments, and I definitely will support the motion. I just want to make sure, yeah, that independently of all the procedural issue, what I heard you say is we want the problem solved. And I think all of us do. That's the kind of city we're moving here towards, is solving problems. But the fact is your clients have not done anything at all to solve these problems. So I think we're going to be generous, hopefully, and provide some time to solve a discrete amount of time to solve a problem. Having known someone very well who has some similar issues, and I know when I cleaned up some stuff for him or her, and then they threw it back. They got mad at me and threw it back in the yard the same way. The junk that they had collected from many different parts of Imperial Beach. I know that some of the psychological issues involved with hoarding and just obsession with property. So I want to make sure that we can, for me personally, if I had gotten the first notice, I would have done whatever the city wanted, because I certainly want to get to the point where I hire an attorney. And you've done a very commendable job. But when I read something about 8/19/14, it actually, and having grown up in Imperial Beach, I'm sorry if I'm grinning, when a cat entered the house through the roof, the fact is we all have neighbors like that. And I think all of us are concerned with neighborhood improvement. So first of all, thanks to you for offering to deal with this and our city staff for obviously all their work and tenting to come to resolution. So Councilmember Bilber, you want to restate that motion, and so we can be clear on that, what we're agreeing to.
Motion is to continue this item until the second meeting in September and direct staff to look into and address the procedural issues that have been brought up.
Yeah, city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, couple of points. First, we just need to make sure we close the public hearing at some point before we address the motions and see if anyone from the public wants to address. And then secondly, staff handed me the notice that went out to the property owner, and I checked against the code section that Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. J, what was your last name?
Eliezer.
Thank you. Mentioned, which is 1.16110. And Mr. Holden, when was this notice served on the property owner?
August 3rd.
August 3rd, which is the date of the notice. And it contains all the requirements of 1.16110, other than there's a typo. It's called a notice to eliminate. It should have been notice to abate, but it contains everything. So procedurally, they received the proper notice for this hearing. And to address the question about the procedure of removing a vehicle, there is another process. This resolution is simply asking for a notice to abatement, which is the next step. And staff is asked until September 21st, so nothing would happen by staff until that date. It gives them if you want to adopt it now or not. And after that point, if staff chooses to take the other actions authorized by the notice of abatement, then there's some additional notices that would go out to the party about removing the vehicles, about going to court, things like that. So there is notice. This is the chance. So if you adopt this today, nothing's going to happen until the 21st of September. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Well, first of all, Mr. Bilber, did you want to respond to that at all? I want to make sure I close the public hearing so we can do the motion again. So without the sanction of the city council, I'm closing the public hearing. And then, Mr. Bilber, could you restate your motion for the record? Or did we get that? Is that okay for him to have said that earlier? Is that okay, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes.
Okay,
I
that's
just wanted to
fine.
make
All right,
sure we
thank you.
had
Okay.
closure of the public hearing.
Fine, thank you. All right, is there any second? Please vote.
Conversation,
Oh.
please. I was just wondering if the maker of the motion would consider anything about the accrual of additional fines for this month that we've allowed, or did you want to perhaps put those in advance? If I could make that friendly amendment, we have this additional month. We're also going to, if colleagues are acceptable, hold the daily fines that will be accruing, if we could put those in advance until the next meeting.
All right, I think we've already sort of done that.
Okay,
Yeah, we didn't plan on doing any more
okay,
until
all right.
the council made their decision.
Since we're talking about fines, can I speak?
You can.
Sure.
Is there, and I'm not suggesting this, I'm just asking the question, $14,000 is owed. What what is done in these cases? City attorney or city manager, are these ever like, you get your roof fixed, we'll do this, do that? I mean, what happens in these cases? And I've never been involved in a case like this. So is there a little balance?
Just make sure
a little
you're clear.
flexibility?
Procedural, are we going back to a public hearing or is this allowed during the discussion of the motion? Fine, thank you. Okay, okay.
As Councilmember Bragg mentioned earlier, code enforcement is all about getting compliance, and there's multiple tools, and one of those is fines. So when you get to the point where someone's complied is what you want, then you can have that discussion about whether to waive, whether it's fair. But the reason that you have the fines is partially because staff has to do a lot of work to get compliance, so you compensate them, the city, for that time. So that goes into consideration. And there is a process to remove it from the tax if you decide to do that. So again, it's not recommended you do that until you get compliance. But it is something you can use, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want them to do what they're supposed to do and be in compliance.
Thank you.
Just one more comment. I mean, I think all of us, and you use the word trusting, all of us have either grown up in Imperial Beach or been in Imperial Beach. I think it counted a total of like 140 years total in and around Imperial Beach. So, which means, and that's only 3 years for Lori. She's so young. But anyway, all of us are trusting. We're very compassionate, and obviously we're serving here because we really want to do the best for our community. So, but I think all of us will feel that we're being trusting right now, and we want to make sure that within a month things are done. Because I think after that, when you abuse our trust, we won't be super happy. So we want to proceed with this. We take a vote now. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and your motion, and thank you.
All right, enough for that. All right, reports. 5.1 Biennial Investment Report presented by Chandler Asset Management. Administrative Services Director Bradley will introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll make this brief. As part of our the city's investment policy, twice a year we have Chandler Asset Management come up and give an investment report. Before I move into and having Jason Schmidt come up and do the report, I just wanted to set the groundwork. What you see before you is this comes right out of our budgeting process. So these are the same numbers you've seen over and over in my last few presentations. But on the left side, you see that I've listed out all our cash and investments citywide. And so we have money sitting with Chandler Investments, which Jason will speak of soon, shortly. We have money in the local agency investment fund. We also have Union Bank, that's our checking account. We have some bond reserves and a small escrow account. So combined, that makes about $35 million. And we've talked about all these specific numbers. And, you know, when you hear that, that's a big number. The city's flush with money, but, you know, it's all designated to specific funds and specific projects. And so it's important that we all know that on the right side is I list out all the funds in which the general fund, all the funds in which these dollars belong to. And so it's important to realize that, you know, there are specific purposes for all this money, and it's within our general ledger, and it's within our budgeting process. And so we can get a better idea of where those funds belong. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. We went through that in real detail in the budgeting process, but I'll go ahead and ask Jason to come on up and I will get his presentation started for him.
Good evening, everyone. It was a long session there for a few minutes there. So let's talk about something a little bit happier. Let's talk about assets and what you have as far as different things in the portfolio. And so I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief, but I'm going to start off here, on page 4 and just talk a little bit about the employment situation. So we continue to gain jobs in this country, around 250,000 jobs we're creating on a monthly basis. And the unemployment rate has now dropped to 5.3%. So we continue to see, you know, the labor market get better. Things are getting tighter in the labor market. One of the things I like to say is they have an indicator called the JOLTS indicator. And essentially what that says is how many jobs are available and how many people are applying for those jobs. At the depth of the recession, It was for every person there were 10 people that wanted each job that was available. Now it's only 2 people that are applying for every job. So we're seeing things get a lot better there. And with that backdrop, really talking about the Federal Reserve, and I'm going to go a little bit further up here and talk about inflation and the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is now contemplating whether to raise interest rates. So remember, the Federal Reserve has had a very accommodative monetary policy through the Great Recession and things like that. And through that has been basically a zero interest rate policy. So one of the things that they had was quantitative easing, and they were purchasing investments for the portfolio, for our portfolio at the Federal Reserve. And then the other thing that they had done is brought interest rates basically to zero. And now what's happening is the Federal Reserve is now contemplating whether to raise interest rates in the future. And so what we really believe is going to happen is probably by the end of 2015, they will raise the federal funds rate. Remember, they only control short-term interest rates. Longer-term interest rates are controlled by the marketplace. And we think that it's going to be somewhat of a 25 basis point increase. So today they have a range between 0 and 25. They'll probably just make that up to 25 basis points. With that, I think that the market has greatly anticipated this. This is one of the most talked about subjects in the financial press. And remember, this will be the first time in almost 10 years that they'll raise the federal funds rate. So it's pretty historic at the same time. Looking at gross domestic product, what we've seen here is really some pretty big revisions here in gross domestic product. Remember when I talked to you earlier, the first quarter was basically negative at that point. Now it's revised up to positive. And that's what's really swaying a lot of the federal governors really to maybe raise interest rates in the future. And so what we continue to see here is that the economy continues to grow. Yes, we do have some quarters where we have a little bit weaker economic numbers, but then of course those accelerate out of that. Looking here at the 2-year Treasury note, I choose this because if you think about the portfolio that Chandler manages for you, it's about an average 2-year maturity, so it makes a good reference point for that. And really what this is a tale of the Fed. So you can see at the beginning of July 2013, the 2-year Treasury note was at 30 basis points. Think of some of the events that were happening at that period of time. Federal Reserve was continuing to purchase securities and under quantitative easing. And the second part of that, we have their interest rates. Then as Ben Bernanke started to talk a little bit about how he's going to taper, meaning that he was no longer to purchase assets, you see that the 2-year note started to move up. That was basically in 2014. And then as Janet Yellen took over as chair of the Federal Reserve, she started to talk about maybe raising interest rates. So you can see the 2-year note continue to accelerate out of there. If you think about this at about 70 basis points today, there's already probably one interest rate move baked into the cake already when you're buying 2-year notes. So a lot of the things that I'm asked is, why would we continue to buy 2-year Treasury notes when the Federal Reserve is going to raise short-term interest rates? Well, the Fed, like I said before, only controls federal funds rates, which is an overnight rate. And what you can see here from the 2-year note is a lot of that's already been anticipated. So right now you can buy 2-year Treasury notes, and although the Fed may raise rates, you could actually see 2-year Treasury notes remain relatively the same for that period of time. Page 11 is looking at the yield curves. So what you can see there is the brown line is that of April, and you can see the green line is that of July. You can see a small interest rate rise there, especially in the longer term. So this chart on the very bottom has the terms of the securities from 3 months out to 30 years. And then the other side of that, or the other axis, is really the interest rates available there. And what's really amazing here is that the 2-year Treasury, the 10-year Treasury note still has about 2%, 2.5% right now. And so although we have all these things happening as far as the Fed raising rates, longer term rates really haven't moved that much. In fact, if you look from a few years ago, they've actually come down a little bit. So it's kind of an interesting thing happening in the marketplace. Now let's take a look at your account profile. So investment objectives: safety, liquidity, and finally yield. The benchmark that we use is the 1 to 3 year U.S. Treasury notes, and the portfolio purchases securities that are compliant with your investment policy and California State Code. Page 14 is compliance. Your portfolio fully complies with your investment policy and California State Code. And then on page 15, looking at the account profile, remember this is just the assets that Chandler manages for the city. So there are other assets that Doug showed you a little bit earlier. It shows the LAIF balance and things like that. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly versus the benchmark. I'm going to focus in on 630. The benchmark's average maturity 1.83 versus the portfolio, which is 1.96. The average duration, remember duration is your portfolio, the sensitivity to interest rates. The greater that number, the more sensitive. The less that number, the less sensitive. Your portfolio right now is 1.69 versus the benchmark, which is 1.79. So a little bit less than the benchmark. We acknowledge that rates are relatively low. We might get a small graduated interest rate increase, so taking a little bit less than that. The average purchase yield, 1.01%. So I think we should throw a party. We're now above 1% as far as the portfolios of what it's earning. If you look even back in the past on 331, it was at 92 basis points. So one of the things that's happening is, yes, there may be some short-term negatives to interest rates rising, i.e. the Federal Reserve, but the positives will be is that their portfolio over the long term will start to earn more money. And that's what we've all been kind of complaining about as far as fixed income investors, is how little return we've been getting on our money. So we continue to see that start to rise and gradually. The average market yield is 76 basis points. It's a AA rated portfolio, and the value of that portfolio has grown from about 24.6 million to 20.4.7 million dollars. So about a $20,000 increase there. Then looking at how the portfolio is distributed, I'm going to focus in here on 630. These are the different sectors of the portfolio. So 22.1% is in U.S. Treasuries, 28.8% is in U.S. corporates. We have a small amount in the money market fund, less than 1%. You can see agencies are 40.9%, and then asset-backed securities are 8.1%. And then looking at the different issuers there, what I really want you to take away from this chart is if you start from the very top and go down all the way to the Federal Home Loan Bank, those are government securities. So the majority of the portfolio consists of government securities. And then as you go down from there, you can see the different corporate securities. You can see that there is a relatively large position in JP Morgan today. That's an existing security. That security actually has pretty good characteristics, so we've kept that security. That security was purchased a while ago. And if you added in some of the other balances of the portfolio, that would also bring that percentage down. And then finally, here's a quality distribution. You can see that everything that we have in the portfolio today is rated A or better. Those two not rated securities, or that 2%, is really in securities of the asset-backed securities that are rated by other entities such as Moody's or Fitch. This presentation here just shows the S&P ratings. And then you can see the duration distribution here. Think of this as a maturity distribution. So your portfolio is in the green as of 6/30, and as of 3/31, it's in the tan. What I really want you to take away from here is look how many securities mature in 2 years or less. So even if we're to have some slight interest rate increases, there are the opportunities to take these proceeds of these securities and reinvest that into that higher interest rate environment. You can see that over the last 3 months, that's had a positive effect as that purchase yields moved from 92 basis points up to 1.01%. And then you can see the investment performance here. This is member total return. So that includes both realized and unrealized gain losses along with any income. And you can see over the last 3 months, the portfolios earned 9 basis points versus the benchmark of 14. A little bit underperformance there, but over 12 months, 86 versus 88 basis points. And then since inception, 95 basis points versus 77 basis points. I do think that these numbers are going to continue to grow, i.e. they're going to get better as we continue to have higher income levels on the portfolio moving forward. And then section 3 is really the portfolio holdings, and I can answer any questions that you may have on the holdings.
Any questions from the council? Comments?
Yes.
So overall, are we at AA or AA1?
So what we're showing there, and I'm going to actually turn the presentation back to that so everybody can see that, is what we do there is we look at it versus 2 rating agencies. So one being S&P and one being Moody's. So AA1 is on the Moody's side of the equation, which AAA is the highest that you can achieve. AA1 is right below that. And then as far as on the AAA side of S&P, we're down at the AA side of the equation. But remember, the U.S. government is rated AA plus by S&P. So really just right below that. The reason being that's a little bit less than all the government securities. We own corporate securities and things like that that have lesser ratings, but still very, very high quality securities.
And Chandler, you've been with us for, tell us how many years?
Actually, I can tell you who have it on a since inception on the performance. So July 31st, 2013. So we're looking at 2 years.
2 years. And what do you see in the, when you get your crystal ball out, what do you see in the future?
So what I see in the future is talk about the financial markets and the bond market in particular, is I think that the Federal Reserve is really, they're really contemplating right now whether zero interest rate policies are having any positive effect on the economy anymore. We've been down here for a long period of time now, and I think that they're just getting tired of having a zero interest rate policy. They also acknowledge that that isn't necessarily the best policy to have, that there might be some risks to having that policy for a long period of time. So what I think that you're going to see is a gradual percolating up of interest rates as long as the rest of the economy continues to remain healthy. I think the headwinds to that are definitely what's going on in China. I think people are going to want to watch that. not necessarily as far as their stock market in general, but how that affects their overall economy in the sense that we export to China at the same time. And so how is that going to hurt some of our exporting countries to that? But in general, I think what you're going to see is probably a gradual rise in interest rates. But I also think that that's going to be a net positive to fixed income investors over a long period of time because they're going to be able to earn more money off of their investment.
Well, I always look forward to your presentation, and I know Doug in finance does a fantastic job together. It's a great team, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very, very much.
Great, thank you.
So you have any comments or questions? Great, we can move on then. Thank you very much. Sorry. I do 18 million things at once. 5.2, appointments to the Design Review Board and Tidelands Advisory Committee. And just to give you some feedback, I want to thank the council for, what's the word, selecting or choosing a new way of an alternative, not a new way of really collectively or collaboratively identifying and selecting candidates and interviewing candidates. So we had a very, very inclusive process where all of the council members had the opportunity to interview applicants. We had a very distinguished and impressive group of applicants. All of us asked the same question of each applicant. So it was very fair. It was an open process. And it was open to the public. And I think the feedback that we received from the applicants and the public was that it was a very, they were very pleased to see the process in place. So I know I have a public speaker. Should I allow that person to speak first before we talk about the recommendations? Okay, so we have Sandra Brillhart. Would you like to come forward and speak, or did you just give a card? Up here.
I just wanted to reiterate what Serge said. I really appreciate the council taking action to fill these important positions with all of the exciting things that are going on in IB. I think a critical review by the people on this committee is really important to ensure the quality of life that we have come to appreciate and really love in IB. And I think this is a real positive step forward. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we had a number of a few applicants, and there were applicants for the Design Review Board for 2 terms of office in accordance with the municipal code. There was 1 term expiring December 31st, 2016, and 2 terms expiring December 31st, 2018. With that, so I'm going to talk about these first. The first term would be Peter Smith for that. The second term would be for the two terms expiring December 31st, 2018 would be Dante Pamintwam and Ilya Barana Shinhin. Then for Thailand's Advisory Committee, we have 3 terms expiring on December 31st, December 2018. That would be Joshua Hill, Mary Susan Doyle, and Bruce Robertson. So, do we have any comments or questions for the City Council? Would you like to make a motion to appoint these?
It was a great process. I know for one, I was one that was kind of hesitant on doing a public interview. But after doing it, I thought it was a great process, and we had fantastic candidates. Everybody that interviewed were very highly educated and qualified. So I know it must have been a tough decision for you to make.
Great, thank you. Any other?
I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague, Mr. Patton. It was, a public interview by a panel of council members was tough. It was grueling, and the applicants came prepared to answer questions. They came prepared to ask questions. They were all extremely educated, extremely dedicated to the city of Imperial Beach. Obviously, some knew the subject matter better than others, and I'm sure that's what was probably used in the decision making that our mayor went through. This was really the first time that I had been able to participate in this process. I really appreciated the mayor including his colleagues up here on the dais in the process. I really wanted to thank the applicants for putting themselves out there. It was just really awesome to see that many people come forward to be considered for these positions. I would, if there, did you have any comments, Mr. Bowbury? Then I would certainly move to accept the recommendations from our mayor. I would make that motion that we
Great.
accept your recommendations.
Great. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present, Spriggs absent.
And thank you very much. I know Mr. Hill's here this evening. Welcome aboard. Thank you very much for your offer of service. We really enjoyed speaking with you. It's great. Thank you. And the rest of all the applicants as well. Moving on to item 5.3, discussion and consideration of resolution number 2015-7618, providing $50,000 to the Boys and Girls Club of South County to address the funding shortfall in providing recreational services on behalf of the city of Imperial Beach and Imperial Beach Sports Park. City Manager Hall will give a report on the item.
Mayor and council, staff is seeking approval of resolution number 2015-7618. And at your last meeting on August 5th, the city council gave us direction to prepare a resolution that would appropriate $50,000 to the Boys and Girls Club that will allow us to continue our relationship with them and will allow us to continue to have the Boys and Girls Club provide recreational services to the city of Imperial Beach. And so what we are seeking again is a motion and approval of resolution 2015-7618 that will create the budget amendment and the appropriation to the Boys and Girls Club.
Ruiz. So, Ms. Ruiz, I received an email from a concerned citizen, excuse me, and just a couple questions I could ask you, maybe clarifying.
Sure.
The weekend skate park, and you probably went over this last time about the hours opening. What time is a weekend skate park going to open? Is it 9 a.m., 10 a.m.?
Right now, it's set up to be 9 to 7.
Right.
And that's also for the weekends. So one of the things that we were asking as staff was the weekends in particular, when we were not going to be there, we would still have to pay staff to come in and open and close. And if we were to come up with a partnership with the city for those individuals who are already opening up the restrooms, if they can walk a few steps and open up the skate park, we hope that the skate park hours would continue, because at 9 o'clock, you'll have quite a few youngsters waiting for you to open the gate. So we see that necessity is there. We would never encourage anybody to change the hours of operations. They seem to work very well.
Is that going to be done? Because I think it's pretty crucial that we're opened at 9.
Yeah, Councilman, at your last meeting, you did approve that change to the agreement, and the city now will assume responsibility to make sure that the skate park is open, skate park. And I talked today with the Public Works Director, Mr. Levine, and we will make that part of our morning routine. The skate park may be open prior to 9 a.m., but it will never be open after 9 a.m. It'll be open prior, most likely probably in the 7:30 range.
Yeah, and I remember a city staff member is going to open that.
That's correct.
And let me tell you my rationale, and it was actually listed in the letter. My son, who's younger, he likes to get there early because it's just, for him, he has a better feeling of being there with younger kids. And before that, I call them, the family feeling. Before that, I don't want to say the rough kids, but the more experienced kids can't get there about 10 o'clock. So he makes it his point to get there as early as possible. And it's just a better feeling for him. And I think other kids feel that way because all his buddies,
of course,
if they miss that window, they're
right. They'll lose out on it. So one of the things that we've seen was we've been getting the same feedback. So we'd like to have an instructor have a course for these kids at the skate park. So maybe they can teach them some tricks and have some fun, but also teach them the safety element. And we'll try to always encourage all of the skaters in there to be wearing their pads and their helmet. It's not a requirement right now, but if they see our classes going on and somebody leading by example, we hope to change that. But one of the things that we would like to do is offer a class for that. And that's hopefully something that we hear in this needs assessment, that we want our youngsters to not only be labeled as that skate kid, but maybe we can turn it around and make something positive out of it. And if we can get some more participants down there for a more formal reason, that would be a lot better.
Yeah, that comfort zone, I guess that
Of course,
word.
yeah.
And safety is number one.
Yes.
Etiquette is also very important.
Strong side.
And having respect for others, is like super important, to me and as well as everybody else. And then one more thing, and they've also mentioned Mr. Spicer was key to opening up the skate park quite often. So I want to give kudos to Mr. Spicer. He's not in the audience. And then weekend Boys and Girls Club hours. And did we change those? Are they 10 to 2 now? I mean, can you repeat those?
So we would like to be operating on Saturday mornings because we feel that we're getting a lot of momentum with our classes, especially in the dance area, where if you have the working parent who cannot take their young one to class, that we can offer a Saturday morning where they can come and enjoy ballet or cheerleading or hip hop, or even for the moms or for the dads, or like Mayor Dedina will be doing tomorrow, they can participate in Zumba at a Saturday morning, so that they can enjoy something too on the weekend.
Thank you
So
for
our
mentioning
times
that.
right now,
To
that's
remind
a
me.
small plug. Our times right now that we're hoping for is 10 to 2. That gives everybody enough time to be able to wake up on a Saturday morning on a non-school day, but also have enough time to do something the rest of the afternoon with your family.
Okay, check. Okay, looks like you answered all my questions. And please do take pictures of him for your
I
next
will.
for your next presentation. Thank you.
I definitely will.
Councilman, the one last thing I would add is that you also charged both Mr. Reese and myself to come back with some different ideas and options about how we might be able to maybe be more self-sufficient next year. And I think a lot of that's going to come out of the needs assessment that's going to be happening in the next couple of months. So staff took that to heart, and Aaron and I will work together to make sure that hopefully we're not back here in this situation again next year. That'll be our goal. So.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. City Manager, are those gates to the skate park in fact now being open at 9 o'clock? Is that happening now?
I talked to Mr. Levine, and I believe that that will start tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah, we started that. We had that discussion today.
Okay, because I believe my colleagues, we all received a letter. I'm not going to use the woman's last name, but her name was Veronica, and she brought up some very poignant issues about wanting her son to be at that skate park early for the reasons that Mr. Patton just spoke about. So I wanted to make sure that we do have those gates open so that our youngsters can take advantage of that. As far as the recommendation for the $50,000, to me, it's a small investment in our community. And I for one, hope that in the future, we're spending more money than $50,000. So if there's no other comment, I would move that we approve staff recommendation of resolution 2015-7618.
Is it? No, go ahead. Is this in the condition that I have to do Zumba tomorrow at 6?
You want me to make that a motion? I will. But I did in the staff recommendation, and I just wanted to reiterate the annual report from the club to the council to include a profit and loss statement.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or? Great. Is there, did you second the motion already?
Yeah.
Great. Please vote. Great.
Councilmember Patton, please vote.
Use your finger.
I did.
Mr. Mayor, can we have an oral vote, please?
Sure. Please vote.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Great. Moving forward, we have item 5.4. The Kegel informational update regarding the mixed-use development with 3 residential condominium units above commercial space at 951 Seacoast Drive. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow night at Zumba. Glad everyone knows that. City Manager Hall will give a report on the item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are bringing forward to you an informational item, not for any action. As you know, at your meeting on July 15th, you approved the development known as Lighthouse Point. Following that meeting, the applicant had some conversations with some of the residents in the community and would like to make some minor adjustments that are still in keeping with the approval that the city council granted on July 15th, but that will be, I think will respond to some of the concerns that were raised by some of the residents during the process. And so I just wanted to give you some information on those since it was your approval and just let you know some of the things that have changed on the project. And before I do that, I really want to thank both the applicant and the residents. I think we really had some really good dialogue. I think we were certainly able to understand what some of the constraints of the applicant were. At the same time, we really, I think, had some very meaningful input from some of our residents and some of the concerns they have, which I think will certainly improve our review process as we move forward. So again, I thought it was a really good process, really enjoyed the dialogue that we had during the process, and I just wanted to say that publicly. But some of the primary changes that we are seeing in the project is that the roof deck that was initially proposed to address the landscaping requirement for the project will be eliminated because we were able to satisfy the landscaping at the ground level. And a lot of that is some of the hardscapes, some of the street furniture, and some of the other things that will be included in the project. And essentially what that does is it will reduce the elevator roof height down to the 35 feet. Right now it's at 44. And so that will be very helpful, as well as the stairwell will be reduced down to that 35 feet. So essentially what that does is it really does have a significant effect on the profile of the building. Some of the things that were the highest were the elevator shaft and the stairs. So if there's not the roof deck to accommodate the landscaping, it really does lower the profile of the building. And I think that was important to the residents. There's also a setback on the commercial portion of the building that faces Elder. And the applicant is willing to have a setback of an additional 2 feet so that there is more space, more public space along the sidewalk. And so essentially right now what you have is a curb and gutter and a 5-foot walk. At this point, there behind the curb and gutter, there will be 10 feet between the curb and gutter and the commercial wall. That should accommodate a much wider sidewalk, maybe some additional landscaping, make that more of a public space. And so we thought that was a not only a good compromise, but we think that will improve the public space, and it will help set back that building a little bit from the public right of way. Finally, the applicant is willing to do some step backs on the balconies on the 2nd and 3rd floor and round the corner of the building so that there is improved views and view sheds towards the coast on both the 2nd and 3rd floors as well. So again, we wanted to give you that report and let you know that we very much appreciated the willingness of the applicant and the input from the residents to make a project better that we think is going to be more acceptable. I know that the residents appreciated the fact that the applicant was willing to discuss those changes with them. Primarily, the approval that you granted on July 15th is in place. These are administrative changes. So we're not asking the council to reconsider the project, but we did, because there was so much public comment on this project, we did want to make sure that we brought forth these changes to the council so that you were aware of them. So I don't know if there's any questions from the council, but we did just want to provide you with that information.
Great. Well, we have a number of speaker slips. And then just to restart, just in terms of process, we have 3 speakers that requested 6 minutes each. And, you know, having been on the opposite side of the sort of the aisle, basically, I was always frustrated with the sort of lack of sort of policy on process regarding public speaking. I know the city of San Diego, for example, I've been involved in many public hearings where the city will say, if there's a formal group, they can do a 10-minute presentation, they can do a PowerPoint, we're going to let them do that. And then other members of the public can speak 2 minutes or 3 minutes. But I offered to do that because I thought it might be a much easier way to have, if you're one group, to have a coherent and professional discussion on the, if there's a formal neighborhood group. I think that's a much more equitable and fair process. However, that was rejected by this group, which is fine. I would just urge you to remember that more is not more, that less can be more, and to really, if there's 3 of you saying the same thing, maybe be strategic and think about who's willing to give up some time just to be more effective and have us hear you better. I'm not giving that because I'm trying to be fair, but more importantly, make sure that we actually hear you rather than have you speak for a long time and make the same point, all 3 speakers. So that's it. But anyway, I'd like to urge you to just think about that. And then I have a number of, and that was because I have at least 20 speaker slips here, but I want to make sure that, Randy, it looked like maybe you wanted to speak. Is that clear? Or did you want to speak or not? I'm sorry? Briefly. Okay, because it seemed like you were the only person out of this group that wanted to speak. The rest, it seemed like they were just writing comments. Is that correct? Mr. Carey? Okay. Okay. All right, that's fine. All right. Councilmember Bragg.
I was just, as I was going over the agenda, I wondered, why wasn't this on consent? It's, it's a report.
You bet. Councilwoman Bragg, that's a very good question. We're not asking the council to take any action, so typically that item would be placed on consent. However, because there was significant public input and even to the fact that there was some notification concerns with this project, we wanted to be as transparent as possible. We wanted to make sure that this was really vetted in the public and that you were aware of the significant efforts that the applicant and the residents went through to reach this conclusion. So we did place it on the agenda as a report.
Thank you, and I really appreciate, I know that the mayor weighs in on the agenda as well, so I really appreciate both of you being sensitive to this issue.
So how about this? We're going to give you extra time, but at 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you how long you have left. There's 3 people that would like to, 3 or 4 people like to speak to, 3 who've asked for extra time. How does that sound? Well, anyway, we'll start with Mr. Michael Carey. It's always a pleasure to see Mr. Carey.
Mayor, is there donated time on this one? The city clerk needs to know how long to put on this schedule.
Well, why don't we start at 3 minutes and then
Okay.
we can restart
There
it?
is a donated time though, just to
Yeah.
answer that.
We just at 3 minutes. We just asked you how much longer do you think you have?
But since I can't help myself, I'm going to speak to the process. It was actually as a matter of courtesy to make a coherent presentation. And you've got to know that we wouldn't have 3 people saying the same thing over and over again. We spent a lot of time on this. Then I came at the request of the city manager to come and talk about the thing tonight. So that was another hour, besides coming to talk to Tyler. So because I didn't want to show up and not have people prepared, then I talked to Jackie about how to do the speaker slips. I mean, I think I spent about 3 hours out of courtesy to try to make this short presentation, coherent. We were involved, I was involved, and it's not a group, but I don't know what we are. It was people that were concerned about the project. So after the project was approved, the specific one, the Lighthouse project, and there were issues with it, I think Terry was initially approached by someone from the city staff saying it was would be a good idea to perhaps see if we could do something about this with this dissatisfaction that had been expressed. And that's in the report. Where it went from there was a series of meetings. I got included in it, and so did Elizabeth Shapiro. So actually the 3 of us wound up meeting with city staff, a lot with Tyler. And what was a result of that, now I presume you said that they were going to get the other materials, right? So you received materials tonight. Part of the result was that Elizabeth and I signed an appeal. And it's important that you look at the appeal because the appeal is overall a whole range of objections that we had. And we had the option of bringing this, you met as a planning commission, and we had the option of appealing this to you as a city council and bringing it back. So out of that, we wound up in these discussions, and what was being offered, and I thought was a good idea, from the developer who said, I will make these changes voluntarily if you will withdraw the appeal. That was actually what the quid pro quo was going to be. So we discussed it at great length, and that was where we landed. In what you have there are the 4 or 5 changes which have to do with bringing the height down, doing setbacks, a range of things which we felt should have been there in the first place. So when we reached the point of an agreement with the city and an agreement with the developer, so the developer wrote a letter which is included in this, what you got in this package.
Mr. Carey, would you like your additional 3 minutes?
Yes, it would. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. When we got to the point where we had a letter from the developer saying they were going to make these changes, and then we talked with the city and we asked, if you'll note, there are 3 or 4 other things that we asked in this, and they're not structural kind of changes, but one, we were very concerned about the safety of the alley. And in the letter from the city, it said that there will be work on things like mirrors or other possibilities because we're not going to be able to make structural changes to the building coming there. And the second one had to do with the height of the lighthouse on the corner. There was going to be an effort to make that as low as possible. And I think those were the 2 things that the city agreed that they would work, and there was good faith agreement in part of that. So when we reached the point with all of that, Elizabeth and I, who had signed the thing, the appeal, signed another letter withdrawing the appeal. That was our agreement. And in the appeal, as you'll notice, there are 50 signatures. They're not signatures to the appeal. They're people that signed and said they supported, supported the appeal and supported what we were doing with the appeal. So it was from us technically, so technically we could withdraw it. So where we landed with all of that was where we are tonight. And I'm here and we are collectively here. And I think you'll find on all those speaker slips, even though people aren't going to speak, they wrote into it, fundamentally saying they support these changes. And I think a lot of them say, but I want to say this was a collaborative effort, which I haven't seen in my history going back with the land use stuff, a situation where the city and the residents and the developer got together and worked collaboratively. And I think it created a very good model for it. So I'm really grateful for those who supported this. I'm grateful to the staff, grateful to the developer and to the residents for making this happen and making it be where it is. I want to make it clear, and I think everybody does, not everybody was in agreement that we should withdraw the appeal. And I think pretty universally, not everybody is satisfied with the project. And as you know, this is kind of linked with 2 other projects that have been approved recently. So we want to make it clear that although we accept this and we're appreciative of the effort and that it's made it better, there's much more to be done. And there's stuff that needs to be done in terms of looking at codes, things about how they're applied, a series of things like that. So as I'm running down, that's the summary of my point.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Mr. Carey. Now we have Terry Johnson.
But
And if
can
you
I-
need extra time, just let me know.
Yes, please. Okay. Ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. Today I went ahead and
And can you say your name for the record?
oh, sorry. Terry Johnson, 137 Elder Avenue. Earlier today, I took the time to write up a formal letter
that explained everything in detail, but I wanted to take a few minutes to come and speak with you tonight. First, I wanted to say thank you to the city staff. They were a pleasure to work with. They're very considerate, very professional. And also thank you to the developer for being willing to work with us on this. Since we were last met, we've spent a lot of time studying the code and reaching out to other professionals that are knowledgeable about the code, both within the city of IB and outside of the city of IB. And with the projects that have been improved with these conditional use permits, we have concerns going forward. I took a lot of time reviewing the three projects, the 951 Seacoast, the 110 Evergreen, and the 110 Elm. And there are some consistent things in there that I would like to ask that you take a closer look at moving forward with future projects. The first was making the concession on the 15-foot height limit for the commercial space. And that's explained in detail in my letter, but the gist of it is it's at your discretion to give them that administrative adjustment. And I don't think it's in the city and the community's best interest to necessarily do that. And I would ask that going forward, you look at that more carefully. Also, there were a series of things with the parking. All in all, very small violations. I think there were 5 or 6. They're detailed in my letter, actually, with graphic figures to support them. What I'm trying to communicate there is this series of small concessions ends up with a substandard parking condition, actually, for the end user and for the people that are going to own their units themselves. I mean, a really good example of what's like that right now in IB is the parking lot over at Miho Sushi and Big Kahuna's, where the spots are too narrow, they're too short, and the drive aisle between the spots is too close together for egress and access. So it's a difficult parking lot to manipulate in. I mean, this isn't a parking lot, it's garages, but it's the same kind of principles. And I would ask that on projects going forward, that we could, spend some more time considering things like that. Also, there's some small things in there like the height limit. The developer is measuring them from finished floor. He needs to be measuring that from finished grade. That makes at least a 6-inch difference or more, considering on what they're doing with the grading. And finally, I'm concerned with issuing conditional use permits in that zone for residential uses. And I think that's something that we should look in more going forward. But all of that said, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to work together. And I really appreciate that the city was willing to do this time. I'm going to need to run over my 3 minutes, but I'll keep it short. So moving forward, there's a lot we need to do for both of us to support the general plan's overriding goal, which is the retention of the quality of life and atmosphere of a small beach-oriented town. From our side, what I'm going to do, and my neighbors, is pay attention to what's coming up with these developments in the council, take the time to review the plans before they go to the design review board, and participate in informing as much of the community as I can beyond the 100-foot radius that you're legally obligated to notify, so that we can get involved earlier and be more productive in moving forward with these projects. What I'm asking you guys to do is to take some more time considering these things that I've outlined here, and to not discount our input. I very much appreciate the process that we had and the dialogue that we had, and I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Elizabeth Shapiro.
I have donated time, and mine can be either 3 minutes or 6 minutes, depending, but I'll probably go with 6 minutes. I'm Elizabeth Shapiro, and I live at 135 Elder Avenue. I'd like to thank the Kegels for their willingness to work together with their neighbors and the city to make the improvements to the project as discussed in the report. It's always good when neighbors come together towards a common good. I also would like to thank the many other individuals in this room, both elected and staff, who reached out to support and cooperate with us and with other neighbors and citizens in this regard. With cooperation and intelligence, I believe that together we can make a difference in guiding our path of development towards the best possible outcome. And this is an example of things that we can do together. There are some changes that the city has made to our code over the past 5 years that came to as a shock to us and our neighbors and fellow citizens. Changes that we really only learned about through the approval of these 3 recent projects. And hopefully in the future, that can be the subject of discussion. But as you can see highlighted in the appeal, which Michael Carey and I filed recently, and which many other citizens signed on in support, and that we withdrew as part of the negotiated settlement, we're also concerned about the interpretation of some of our existing code. As indicated in the appeal, we feel it would greatly improve upon the way we are developing to interpret existing code in a way that is the most neighborhood friendly as possible, and also in a manner that's the most consistent as possible with the Coastal Act and with our general plan. Terry Johnson pointed out in the material she gave you some of the actual code violations as well that were in this project and other projects. She mentioned some of them. In addition, she didn't just mention, but the project as submitted had a floor to ceiling height of 11.9 foot rather than the 13.5 foot. And we are discouraged that plans are being submitted to the city that contain any violations of our current code. It's not good for the city, for the citizens, or for future owners or tenants of a project, or even the developer, to have plans make it to the council level to be approved that either could justifiably be questioned as code violations or that are clear violations, both of which occurred in this project. In order to fix the situation, it really would help to have more levels of review before something makes it to council, because there's a really big burden on limited city staff for these projects. It's a really wonderful step that was taken today to fill out the design review board, but still there is a reason why most cities have a separate planning commission, hopefully consisting of highly dedicated individuals with a mix of relevant skills such as law, engineering, architecture, and city planning. I understand that the council voted to not have a planning commission into the near future, and I hope at some point there is a reconsideration of this plan in light of the amount and level of development that is likely to come to our little community.
Ms. Shapiro, would you like an additional 3 minutes or?
That was my 3 minutes. I'd like to talk for 3 minutes just about some of the more general concepts behind some of the things that we have been asking for and that we think are important. We talked about the fact that this is important for the neighborhood, but as I talked to City Manager Hall about, it's also really important for our economic development. And we had that personal conversation, but we haven't had it with the council. There is a long-term economic benefit to interpreting our code to be neighborhood friendly and consistent with the Coastal Act and the general plan. Retail spaces with substandard ceiling heights are not likely to attract the best tenants, yield the highest rents, or produce the best retail tax revenues. Parking that is difficult to get into, that requires, for example, making a 3-point turn to enter or back out into a busy alley, which is what we figured out it would take for this project together with staff, will reduce the sales prices of homes and decrease neighborhood safety. Further, having inadequate numbers of parking spots will also reduce the sales price of properties, lowering property tax revenues and the potential value of nearby properties. Inadequate quality and quantity of parking also makes for a more stressful and lower quality of life in the surrounding neighborhood. What would have been the cost of adequate underground parking or more parking per resident ratio created by less built square footage is externalized from the developer and becomes a cost to the greater community. The lack of parking also will in time create a negative impression of our community on part of visitors. So that's just in general when we do these kind of things. Similarly, overbuilt lots so as to build as high as possible and to fill the lot as much as possible, leaving little open spaces and inadequate stepbacks and setbacks, not only impinges on views, but it creates a visual impression that is not the charming classic Southern California appeal that we have gradually and carefully been enhancing over the last 20 years. Imperial Beach is not a pass-through location. No matter how much retail space we create, this is not going to be a spot to stop by big lots on the way home from work. We are a destination. Hence, restaurants and small, high-end hotels are much more likely sources of tax revenue for Imperial Beach. But to become such a sought-after destination, we need to have the unique low density and low height, classic California ambiance that makes us special. We should be very careful not to throw out that highest value in the name of short-term potential gains that will unlikely pan out in any case. There will always be pressure in any coastal community to build faster, bigger, and higher. But the most beautiful and community-friendly coastal areas are those that hold out for the most attractive, appropriate, and suitable development.
Thank you very much. Now I have I have 20 speaker slips that I think are people who basically just wanted to provide their speaker slips. So, Mr. Putland, I'll call you up and I'm going to read the names and make sure that, and I'm just basically general one theme that people have put down. So I'll read that and then just list the names of the people who provided speaker slips so you're aware of that. Mr. Putland, and you have 3 minutes, which is what it says on your thing. I just want to make sure. So,
Randy Putland, 20 Ebony, Mayor Dedina, and council, thank you so much. Yeah, I've never seen anything like the neighborhood work together with the staff like this. It was pretty crazy in my time, but thank you for that. Just a couple things. I went to the neighborhood and I listened, and I put just a few things. You guys are the planning commission, so I just put down a few ordinances that we thought that we need to get interpreted correctly, and these like the main items. So I made a list for all the council members. And maybe in your spare time, you could just take a quick look at them, and I appreciate it. Okay. I have one more. There you go. Yeah, I mean, Terry, Elizabeth, Michael, they covered everything. I have nothing else to say. The one thing that comment that I had was I asked about the vacation rentals, and I asked if they would maybe ask our city attorney about it. And I believe, Ms. Bragg, you asked Tyler back on it. I was still wondering about that. That was a little iffy for me, whether somebody builds as a residential, then they go back a year later or 2-3 years later and they start renting as commercial as a vacation rental, and you guys collect the TOT if there's any type of, if that's legal or what. That's the only thing. Anyway, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
thank you, Mr. Putland. So I'm going to read names, and I actually know most of the people here, so I know that if they're here or not. But just to make sure that the consistent comment, it's pretty much word for word almost. Support that the additional comments from these people is support changes made to project, however, disagree with the proposed density, height of building, and parking plan for project. That's pretty consistent. That's Joey Fallon. Joey's not here, but Liesel Gerke, did you want to speak? Okay. Okay, that's all. Brian Brillhart, I'm assuming you're just giving your comment. Great, thank you. Code violation have been ignored on the Lighthouse project. I support the negotiated agreement, but I'm concerned that zoning laws are not being applied to all applicants. Perry Payne, and council must follow codes, provide adequate parking. Tom Cahoon, it's just support Michael Carey. Chase Putland, donate my time to Randy, your dad, and support with reservations. Thank you. It's nice to see you here, Chase. Carrie, I support Carrie Belhoon. I support the changes, but feel very strongly that parking ordinances need to be revived. Patrick Belhoon, I support the changes, pretty much the same thing. Veronica Archer, support the report, but not the process that got us here. New development should benefit the community, not just the developer. John Rendine, support community's recommendations for changes to development, and the remaining issues remain related to density, parking, and code. Victoria Mejia, pretty much the same stuff. Jacqueline Jones, pretty much word for word, whatever else is said. Kelly Leaker, same thing. Michael Carson, same thing. Georgia Ratchford, I agree with the project, but not for IB because it will take away from our small town beach community and a serious parking problem. Daryl Jones, except for code violations, change the code. Is it Mary Goodman? I agree with the negotiated improvements. I don't like the size and scale of the project. It does not fit in with our neighborhood atmosphere. I'd like to change the height codes and require scaling project to fit in better. Mr. Darren Johnson, pretty much the same. Everybody else. Pace, same. And N. Lamses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very quick comment.
Wait. Okay. Just want to make sure you're asking to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
337 Evergreen Avenue, and underground parking.
that's really the issue, I think, on the, at least in my way of looking at it, is parking, again, is always a problem. I'll give you a real quick example. Ocean Beach, problem, cars double parked. You can't walk through their sidewalks there in places. So the main issue is underground parking for that if you're going to do this thing. That's all I've got to say. I yield my time to anybody else who wants to use it.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for your input. Now we have time for council comments. Anything else or,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, Councilmember Patton did have his name on the queue. We're following process and procedure here, so thank you.
Sorry, Mrs. Bragg. I was ready. First, I appreciate this being on the agenda and not on consent. I think Mr. Hall said it all. Mr. Hall said it all. That sounds good. This really needed to be brought out, and it was. And I want to thank all parties that worked together to find a compromise. City staff, who I heard great things about, community development, Mr. Hall, Mr. Mayor, that were professional and great to work with. Mr. Kegel, who made many changes to better meet the code and requests of the public. And then this group, I met with them about 10 days ago, sat down, I was at ear, listened. I talked to Terry Johnson, and I'm calling them the observers. They don't have a name. The observers. A highly involved, intelligent group of citizens who've been motivated to get involved for the betterment of Imperial Beach. That's the way I see them. And I really learned a lot from them. You know, being on city council, you can't know it all. You see these plans and you look at them, you can't know it all. And I kind of learned a lot talking with other people, looking at some of the concerns of the difference of measuring from floor to ceiling from measuring from floor to floor. You know, what's floor to ceiling, the way it has to be, not floor to floor. Keeping a 15-foot first floor. I'm 6'4". I'm uncomfortable walking into a lower building, and I think people generally are. And I think other businesses that we might want to attract to Imperial Beach may not want to be in a building that does not have a high ceiling. Building on an existing grade, not on the finished grade, 6 inches or 8 inches higher. Very important. Something I really didn't look at, but until I started looking at these plans. And parking, crossing lot lines, narrow parking spaces, free and clear backouts. I know backing out of a spot, I don't want a 3-point turn, or I don't want to pull in a 3-point turn. It's going to really affect buyers. If I'm spending $1.5 million to buy a condo or a townhouse, I don't want to make a 3-point turn to pull into my driveway. So there must be solutions. And I think we need to really look at those solutions and issues in the future. I know this is going to happen, and I think there's a lot of concessions that were made. Imperial Beach has gotten a good good reputation for being easy to work with by developers and builders. They could come in here, and we're pretty easy to work with, but let's not be too easy. Or too lenient. Let's really look at it, you know. And I like when people come in and say, working with the community development, with city staff has been great, but let's kind of checks and balances, look at this a little closer. I'm reading from notes. I took some time to write all this out. And there's always a need to be flexible. I think we all know that in life. We need to be flexible when we build, when we do things, when we make decisions. Let's make sure we find balance, stick to our core values. Our general plan, which was from 1990, and I have this quote here: the retention of the quality of life and atmosphere of a small beach-oriented town. And I'm committed to this, and I believe, if I could speak for my council up here and city staff, we're committed to sticking to these core values. So, and that's all I'm going to say on this, but that's it from Bobby Patton. Thank you. Signing out.
Nice speech. Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. I just wanted to, in the spirit of transparency, make note that I did meet with the developer after our last meeting. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And in the spirit of transparency, I did meet with Ms. Johnson to talk about some of these issues. And I did also emphasize the point, and I'm just going to reiterate, it would have been much better to have a 10-minute presentation with PowerPoint and something really thought out where you don't emphasize the same point. And I think it's something we're just going to, I would really emphasize in the future when you do that, you really think strategically about the best way to convey information to a council. And more importantly, just work together as a group to do that. And that's something that I'd love to do in this city that other cities do, where groups get time, adequate time to give a very professional presentation. And then obviously members of their group can give additional input, but it just makes it much more effective. And that's something I'd like to do to move to so people feel like they're being treated equitably and transparently. Because I think that's something in the past we haven't done as a city and mayors haven't done, but that's something I'm willing to do. So just think about that. It's not designed to curtail your input. It's designed to, the idea is really give you much more adequate time frame to provide more professional input. And then I'll tell you what the same thing I told Terry is that, you know, I think it's great that we did this process and I'm really glad everybody worked together, but I would love to have you guys figure this out because as someone who's lived in Imperial Beach since I was 7 and grew up on the area on the east side of town, I can guarantee you that we spent the last 25 years talking about basically two blocks in from the beach. And so I'd really like to, you know, we've got entire neighborhoods with 30% poverty rate where there are areas of super high density apartment buildings and no crosswalks, no access to supermarkets, where people are afraid to cross the street, where there's no parks and the alleys aren't paved, and frankly, where we don't have sidewalks. And that was something that was so nice to do. So all of you are very passionate people, and you've done a great job over the last 25 years, really helping improve the quality of life in Imperial Beach. But there's going to be a significant neighborhood revitalization effort for all of the 4 square miles throughout the city. And I'd love to have all of you work with the city to figure this out so we can spend our time figuring this out, but also working collectively and collaboratively with all our residents to make sure that every neighborhood is treated equally and that every kid has a chance to cross the street on a secure sidewalk. We make sure that everyone has the equitable access to parks, that we pave alleys, that we put in sidewalks, and we get a supermarket so that folks who don't have cars and don't live in homes on the beach can actually get in and buy cost-effective food. So that's something I really want you guys to get involved with. I think there's going to be a really great effort to do that and really think that and walk some of those neighborhoods by 13th Street and Grove and areas that we have neglected for a long time and really think about how we can get all that energy and passion and vision for our community and make sure it isn't just for the first 2 blocks of our city, because I think that's something that we've done over the last 25 years. But anyway, thanks everybody for their input. I really encourage this process. I was really heartened by it. I love the dialogue because that's what our democracy is about. And I really love to see us reach an agreement on how to move forward on this. So thank you very much. I don't think we have to vote anything, right? Now we have something about it's near and dear to my heart, 5.5 13th Street Class 2 Bikeway Project. And Public Works Director Hank Levine will give a report on the item.
Mayor, council members, in 2013, the council approved a grant or approved us, the staff, to go after a grant and we to improve or comply with the basic transportation plan that was adopted in 2008, which is putting a class 2 bikeway on 13th Street. We went out for bids, advertised for bids in July, and we opened them. And well, we scheduled an opening for them, and we got no bids. The project is, let me just describe the project a little bit. It's a project that is to slurry seal from the Bayshore Bikeway south to the Navy base on the south end, NOLF. This particular project actually takes that stretch of 13th Street from Cala south to Iris Avenue or to the base. It slurry seals it. It puts in a class 2 bikeway, retains parking on on both sides of the street. It drop sync of my brain. It changes the highway, the street from a 4-lane to a 3-lane, which is a two lanes of traffic, or a lane of traffic in each direction plus a center turn lane. And it is proposing to put in a crosswalk at Grove, which would be signalized, or not signalized, but would have a push button signal so that cars would know that there's persons wanting to transit this 13th Street or Grove Avenue. Primarily, and the reason we chose Grove Avenue is there's a long stretch between the base and Imperial Beach Boulevard, and we have the middle school, Mar Vista Middle School on the east, and we have Oneonta School on the west, both of which the children walk back and forth between those two schools from either side, depending on which they're elementary or junior high school. So since we got no bids, we worked with the attorney, and we outlined 3 options that are available to us here in this staff report. There are the one is that we could the first option is to re-advertise. We'd have to reformat and re-advertise the project. A second, which is what we're recommending, is we're authorized, once we don't get a bid, we can authorize to negotiate with a contractor of our choice to come in with a project, and then we'd come back to you, assuming we had a satisfactory understanding, with a recommendation to award to this company. The third option would be, we did receive a late bid. It was arrived at 7 minutes after the hour. And there was another one that was en route that apparently it was traffic. Both of these were late because of traffic coming down. Apparently something happened on Interstate 5. We don't recommend the third option, primarily because it would set precedent for any future bids. If somebody wanted to argue or debate that, well, you let somebody bid on or open your bid on one that was 7 minutes late, I'm only 5 minutes, why not me? So we'd not recommend that as an alternative. If you're uncomfortable with us negotiating, you can certainly direct that we rebid it. I would offer the reason we think we had problem getting bids was the slurry seal cost with the striping is less than 50% of the total estimated cost. The crosswalk is also less than 50%. And the remainder is made up with the electrical for bicycle detectors that we're proposing to be installed. In the way the law is written, the primary contractor has to get 50% of the work. So we created a situation which was difficult for a contractor to say, I can do the majority of the work or more than 50%. If we go out to bid, we're going to have to figure out a way to satisfy that requirement and how we do it. There are some ways we can do it, but again, I would recommend it for expediency and for efficiency that you let us go out and negotiate one, and if we're not successful, we'll be back to advertise it. I'm open for questions.
Great. Any questions or comments?
Perhaps the city attorney could help us out here. I don't recall doing too many negotiated bids in the past. And I'm wondering about the option number, I guess the first option, or
that reformat the
first
bid?
option. I'm wondering, is there any wisdom in having two bids go out? Was that a consideration? One for the slurry seal and one for the other portion? And would we have gotten bids back on that?
If we'd have separated them and had two separate projects, I think is what you're asking.
Yes.
You would have some duplicate work because my guess is a contractor would want to do, and I would advertise it for doing the crosswalk first, so that when we're ready to do the slurry seal, we're not slurry sealing over where the crosswalk is or vice versa. So it's in order to get them to be done coincidentally or sequentially, it made sense to have it as one project, and that's why we went that way.
Okay. Who would be doing the negotiation? Would it be yourself? and
Yes.
Engineer and,
Yeah, we'd involve the engineer and myself and maybe Peter and my staff.
okay, thank you.
So, option one, reformat the bid, advertise. How long is that process? Can you expedite it? Does it have to be a 2-week process, 1-week process?
It's probably, I'm guessing a couple, 3 weeks for the engineer to reformat it and restructure it. There's a cost to that. And then we advertise for 3 to 4 weeks, and we have to get an opening, and we have to reschedule it on your agenda, which is first, we're restricted to first or third Wednesday of the month. So you're looking at probably another 5, 6 weeks.
Let me ask you this, and this is a new thing for me, so I want to ask you a couple questions. If you have 2 people that submitted one 7-minute late, and you have somebody else, you have 2 bids, but wait, hold it. If you just, why do you have to reformat the bid? Why can't you just change the date? It's the same bid, isn't it? Why do you have to reformat it?
As we did our inquiry into the contractors, which we expected would be bidding and did not, they were struggling with how to get their 50% done and get subs to do the rest of it. And so, that's it. So we would like to have several bidders, so we have a competitive bid. And
Well, apparently these 2 people that put the bid in must have figured out how to do it.
we didn't open the bid, so we don't know. We have received bids in the past where they didn't meet the 50%. We had to reject them. But your presumption is correct.
Or negotiate with a contractor that you know.
Yes.
Can you negotiate with that contractor to submit a bid? Can you say, hey, why don't you submit a bid? I mean, not even negotiate them, just tell them.
Mr. Levine, Mr. Hall would like to.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, we can ask them to submit a proposal to us, maybe rather than a bid, a proposal, and we can review that. We're not obligated to accept that proposal either. We could look at that and say, this just isn't it. And in the end, we may end up going back to bid, but what we're hoping is that there's a contractor that can do both sides of that, but we won't have the 50% requirement because we're doing a negotiated proposal.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Proposal.
I want to make sure I'm clear on what was just proposed. Mr. Hall, so, because the recommendation is to negotiate a construction agreement with the Class A contractor of the construction of the 13th Street Class 2 bikeway project. Are you offering an amendment of that so that you would require a proposal?
I'm
or
going to make a motion to negotiate a contract with a qualified contractor of the city's choice, that they submit a proposal before we move on. That's my motion.
Any other discussion? Is there a second?
Really? Okay.
Essentially,
Negotiate.
it's just option two, right? I mean, that's the
Option
process
two.
the city's going to go through. If they're going to negotiate with a contractor, they're going to call them and say, submit a
Essentially the same.
proposal. That's option two.
Yeah,
Okay.
with that they accept a proposal. They submit a proposal. Option two, submitting a proposal first.
I think if I may, Mayor, and this process would allow us to do as you're saying, ask a contractor to submit what they would do, charge us to do this. It also gives us an opportunity to talk, sit down, once they've done that, to sit down and talk with them. How do we potentially value engineer this so we don't have to cost, let's say they put in 500,000, can we get it to 450 if we do something differently? A lot of times the contractors have good ideas that they're bound to doing it the way that was written in the contract. They have to do what was written in the contract. If we're negotiating, we can probably value the engineer this thing so that we are getting the most efficient way of completing the project at the best price.
It sounds like a win-win.
If I'm my
So that's my motion.
Yes, Mr. Gilbray.
When we brought this back up, Mr. Levine, I voiced my concerns about stop signs down at Iris. You know, we have two of them that are right within, must have been, how far apart are those stop signs down at Iris, Mr. Levine?
As you come around the corner?
As you're headed south, you have stop sign right before the base, and then you go around the corner, and yeah, there's another one right there.
Yes, as
It's
you
about
make a left-hand turn to go down east on Iris.
Yeah. Probably 100 feet, maybe 200.
It's not more than 100 feet.
I went along with this last year. I kind of compromised, but until we address those stop signs, I cannot support moving forward with this project any longer. I'm really concerned about the backup that's going to happen, like we're seeing on Palm Avenue, and that's just pretty much what I wanted to state. Thank you.
Yeah, I support the motion, and it's a really dangerous street, and I had numerous residents talk to me about their concerns about having their children cross the street. If you walk along that 13th, and there's actually some almost like bumps in the road where it's kind of hard to see people walking. So anyway, I definitely support making the street safer, especially for that's the densest part of Imperial Beach, probably the greatest number of children living, and they're crossing that street with their parents. So very concerned about that. But anyway, do we want to take a vote? I'm sorry? Is there a motion a second? There was a motion a second, yeah. Please vote.
Motion carried by the following votes. Ayes, Dedina, Bragg, Patton, Noes, Bilbray, absent, Spriggs.
Great, thank you. Yes, now move to closed session. Now we're going to move to closed session. Adjourn and move to closed session. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it. It's still early, time to have fun. Wait, why were you here you just wanted to hang out and just